Welcome everybody to this international dinner evening. I'm also very happy to welcome representatives from our Twin Club in Kiel. I can't see who's here at the moment. And I'm not sure whether we have any representatives here from Amersfoort this evening. Unfortunately, we've had some communication difficulties with the Dutch club, but Pip is very kindly recording this meeting and they'll be able to listen to it in time. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker this evening, Nigel Kress from MAP Action. Some of us who went to the district conference in January listened to Nigel's presentation on behalf of his charity, and we have interested both Kiel and Amersfoort clubs in this wonderful charity as well. So I'd just like to welcome Nigel and hand over to him. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Sue, and thank you everybody who's attending tonight and listening in. I'm going to talk about the response to primarily natural disasters, which sadly occur with great frequency and cause huge distress. MAP Action is a charity that's been operating for around 25 years, doing a very special kind of response to these disasters. The presentation starts off on, I'm afraid, a rather solemn note, but I hope that by the time we get to the end of it, and my colleague Darren Conahan, who is one of our key volunteer responders, will tell you about his own work, you will feel possibly a bit uplifted. Could we have the next slide, please? And they will go very quickly.
Thank you. Yes, just got the stuff sorted.
When natural disasters occur, they are absolutely horrific events. This is obviously, as you can see, a tsunami, and the next slide will show you exactly what can result. And it's not just tsunami or earthquake, but the next slide shows a typical tropical cyclone that you might see on the news, but what you often don't see is what happens. Next slide. And so on with earthquakes as well. We've had earthquakes recently. Next slide. And the effects are absolutely disastrous. Next slide. And of course, this causes displacement of people, migration. Next slide. And ultimately, it ends up with this sort of thing, which is almost the tertiary effect of areas that are affected by disasters. Next slide. So what happens? Well, you know, lives are lost, livelihoods are destroyed. It's a complete mess in all these people, in all these places. People are displaced, and very often these events are occurring in areas where the economies are already fragile and everything is completely broken up. The question is, how do we respond? Do we wait until they happen and then send money to some bank account somewhere? Do we try to do something which, first of all, prepares us for when these disasters can occur and puts us in a better position to be able to respond and help those that are affected? And of course, the whole thing is compounded by political situations. Many of the countries that are so badly affected have governments that are unstable, that don't want to admit they've got a disaster, that possibly don't want outsiders coming in to try to help, and yet help is needed. And the most important thing is geographical information. We need to know what on earth has happened. Where are the affected areas? Next slide. What has happened to the people? How have they been displaced? Where have they been moved to? How do you get to them? Here you can see the range of the helicopter, how far it can go without refueling, how far it can come back, and who's doing what where, who else is helping. All this needs to be brought together, and there is no agency that can do this. The United Nations have response agencies, but they don't have the ability to effectively bring together all the information in the way that a small and nimble organization like Map Action can. And that's the key to it. We've got a team of volunteer geographic specialists. They're highly trained in what we do. They give their time freely. Their employees, who might be the local council in Brighton or the fire brigade, allow them time off and recognize how important it is, by the way, that they get this training and how good it is for their future careers. And we provide the same kind of training to our partner network. So we are basically, I suppose you could say, trying to put ourselves out of business. We want everybody to have the ability to use geographic information to respond rapidly to these terrible disasters. And when we're not actually responding to these disasters, we can continue working in the background, trying to build a database that will help us possibly predict where the next disaster is going to be and what information we're going to need to respond to it. Next slide. So we would love to see a world where vulnerable people have access to this geographic information almost before the disasters strike. And we're trying to build up those databases so that, because we can never predict when these terrible things are going to happen, so that we're at least semi-prepared and we're able to respond quickly. Next slide. It's a small team, between 50 and 100 people, most of them volunteers who give their time freely, who spend at least one weekend a month on a training camp, learning to work together, to consolidate the computer techniques that we use, to understand what it's like to be in an emergency. But in order to have so many people able to respond, we have to have quite a lot of people who can manage them. And all of that requires funding. So we've got a core team who coordinate all of this, bring together the volunteers, and that we meet very frequently so that when an event happens, a volunteer might not necessarily know the people that are in their team when they arrive in some strange country, but they've all got a common way of working together. Many of these volunteers are postgraduates, highly experienced in the field of geographical information systems. That's using computers to bring together all sorts of information, put it into maps and spreadsheets where it can be then accessed by the people who really need it, like our partners at the United Nations. We're primarily based in the UK, but we have clusters of people in the Caribbean, Southeast Asia, and also actually in Germany. We meet monthly. Not everybody gets there every time. Once a year, we run a simulation exercise. We had a very nasty outbreak of Ebola on Ashdown Forest recently, and that's what we have to do in order to be ready for this. And the key thing about our volunteers is that, as I was discussing earlier, they're people who do technical work, but they've got a social conscience and they want to make sure that they use their technical skills to help when these events occur. Thank you. We were founded probably around 25 years ago. We've responded to at least 150 emergencies around the world. There's a list there, but all sorts of things ranging from the Southeast Asian tsunami, the Haiti earthquake, the blast in Beirut, displacements from the Ukraine conflict, COVID, the Turkey earthquake recently, a most devastating thing, the flood in Libya. All of these are very complicated and sometimes very politically complicated, as I said. But primarily, we operate through a deep network of partnerships, and particularly with UN agencies and many other NGOs. But one of the key factors is that we are very nimble. We can get our people into the field much more quickly than a large organization like the UN, where the paperwork to send somebody to a disaster zone occupies a week, and we could already be on an airplane. Thank you. Just a quick snapshot of some of the things that we've responded to. No time to go into them, but you get an idea of the spread. And probably this map is unfair because it doesn't show all the hurricanes and cyclones that we've responded to in Southeast Asia. Next slide. Partnerships are absolutely crucial because we would not be able to go to the areas that we work in, or even possibly to be involved with them, if we weren't associated with the UN and its agencies. And it's a two-way thing. They help us, we help them. And very often when something happens, the call will come from Geneva. We need some help. Now, they could have their own experts in this area, but I think they've already decided that we can do it better and we can move more quickly often than they can. Next slide. Huge number of different organizations that we work with. And we do suffer from a problem. We're a small, specialized organization, and it's very difficult for us to get hold of the funding to continue our work that some of these much larger organizations like Oxfam have access to. At the same time, we are very deeply supported, as you'll see later, by foreign governments. Previously, the UK, not at present, but USA, Canada, Germany, Holland have all given us core funding to continue our work. Thank you. Our strategy is continually evolving, but it has to basically be to try to put ourselves out of business in a way. And therefore, training is crucially important. We need to show other people, our partner agencies, how to develop their own teams to do the work that we do. And the countries that we work in who have very poor resources, we can train their people so that they can set up their own units to try to replicate what we do. They can't always do it in a way that we can, but we can start to do that. At the same time, we need to learn a lot about what we're doing, because all these techniques in the computer world, whether we're talking about AI or the latest ability to make this kind of map or that kind of map, we have to stay on top of it. And we have to train our teams in how to analyze data, how to visualize data, and produce the right kind of maps. Next slide. Skill transfer, terribly important, and it's something that we're doing. We've run courses in various parts of Africa, in as far away as Kazakhstan, out in Southeast Asia, in the Caribbean. And so we're gradually building, if you like, a family of people who've been introduced to how to do this work by us. Next slide. But it's all very well directly responding to a disaster when it occurs, but can we also use our skills in some way to try to anticipate what may occur? And if we can we actually reduce the impact of that disaster? By having a group of people who are constantly engaged with map action, but luckily only required to go every other month, every third month, sometimes not for 6 months to a disaster, we can continue in the background, building data sets and information that will help us to respond better to a future disaster, but also provide information to people who supervise these events in countries that will help them anticipate what may occur. So we see this as a very important part of our future role. Next slide. We do this with global and regional partners. We make data sets that we think they can use in the future. And we have members of our team embedded in the UN Center for Humanitarian Data, which is in The Hague in the Netherlands. And this is all work in modeling and predicting crises and helping to build, if you like, early warning systems. That's unfortunately a very difficult area, especially in my field. I'm a geologist, and the early warning of earthquakes would be a wonderful thing, but it's not terribly practical at the moment. On the other hand, we do know where earthquakes occur, and we can start to build data sets so that we are prepared for when they do happen. Here's just a snapshot of some of the places where we're already doing anticipatory work and some sort of predictive analytics. So this isn't just a pipe dream, it's actually happening now. Next slide. Map Action have for quite a long time been recognised as one of Rotary's emergency response charities, but we are not like Shelter Box or Water Box, where you can put your finger on, okay, we'll buy them 2 boxes this year and we'll buy them another one next year. It's a little bit more complicated, and we're trying to find, and perhaps we can, with your help, a better way to see that Rotary funding could be applied to what we do, and also to give you the benefit of the fact that if you can help us to continue our growth and development, you're actually investing now in disasters that are yet to come. We don't have to wait until something horrid happens, and as I said earlier, we send money to some bank account somewhere. We can actually be doing something about it now, and I think that's an important thing that is understood by members of the Rotary community, because I realise that you're very empathetic to what we need to do to respond to these international events. Well, the need in the humanitarian sector is huge, and quite honestly, especially since COVID, the funding is just disappearing and the demands are growing. But one thing that Map Action does do is to help to focus that funding, so that instead of a large pot of money that people haven't really worked out what to do with, armed with Map Action's maps, and this is where the UN finds them so very important, you can focus what really needs to be done. And instead of saying, we've got a disaster, we need umpty million, you can say, we've got a disaster, this number of people are displaced, we have to get them the following resources, and now we can put a cost on it. So that's what it's about. It's really about focusing how we get the best response to this. And ideally, we can do it as we go along, not just after the events happen. Now, what I'd like to do is to introduce you to Darren, who can tell you just what it's like to go and respond to these emergencies. Darren, please come and if everything works, the next slide will come up will be one that Darren wants to talk about.
Yes, I'm going to go and stand down there because there's going to be some. Is it kind of? Oh, no, I got to do some pointing. Okay.
Yeah, so sorry.
It's all right. No worries. I've been in Map Action for 19 years, which does sound a long time. It does feel a long time sometimes. And every now and again, I get a bit jaded, but every now and again, something happens and I get really excited. So I'm going to just talk about a variety of slides which show pictures and next one to point. Okay. Variety of slides that show pictures, and I'll try and give some context to each of those pictures. So whenever there's a disaster, what happens generally is the international community become aware of it through mechanisms that are in place, emails, notifications, etc. And we're part of that system. And when Map Action hear about a disaster, a series of either emails or text messages go out to all the volunteers that are available to deploy. And we respond via a website to say, yep, I'm available, no, I'm not. Or I'm available to work remotely, or I'm available to go into the field. And so when everyone's responded, or as many people as possible have responded, the team in the office decide this is going to be the team. It's going to be a size of 2, 3, 4, whatever the size of the disaster is. And then that team congregates at the airport needed to ship everyone out. And each individual volunteer doesn't have all the kit that they need. They've got their clothes and they've got their experience in their head from all the training that they've had. The head office will organise all the kit, which is not showing up on that picture. Top left. So that's some of the kit that we would take. Those silver boxes are full of printers, laptops, vests, medical kit, all paper, all the things that you're going to need for a deployment to land in country, fire up your laptop and start making maps. So that, I'm not sure what deployment the top left is, but the Philippines. So the photo on the right, there was a team that arrived in the Philippines, team of 2. They arrived on the last flight before the hurricane hit Manila. They said it was one of the scariest flights they'd ever been on, but they landed before, and then no more flights arrived in country for 24 hours. And the hurricane hit an island called Tacloban, which was in one of the earlier slides. And to get to Tacloban, you have to fly. So the team that arrived were then supported by another team that arrived, and so there was about six were in Manila, and 4 of them went forward to Tacloban. And this is 3 of the team that were going forward. I was the one taking the photo, actually. So we got on a plane, go to Tacloban, and we arrive. Devastation. Nobody knows what's going on, but the UN system is in place. They have a reception center where you land, you introduce yourself, and they go, right, you need to get to XYZ, and they'll arrange a vehicle for you, or sometimes the response is at the airport, like it was when I was in Mozambique. So we fly off to Tacloban, we set up with all the UN agencies, all the international agencies, and any local agencies are responding. And if we're lucky, if it's not an earthquake, if it's a flood, or if it's a hurricane or something like that, you might have a nice, comfortable hotel that you're staying in, and a nice, comfortable office that you can work out of. But generally, that's not the case. So there'll be a tent. So a picture, the bottom 2 pictures are OSOCs, which is on-site operational coordination centers. That's where all the decision makers kind of congregate. And the picture on the left, that was in Haiti. Picture on the right is in the Philippines. I'm going to keep moving. You have to keep up with me. So we're not working in comfortable UK kind of environments, European environments. Sometimes there's no power. We've got laptops. They last 2-3 hours, so you've got to be careful about how you use your laptops. Sometimes in Haiti it's 40 degrees. Your laptops overheat, so you've got to kind of turn them off, go for a walk, try and get some air into the system so that it can cool down to function. Next slide, please. Any questions, just fire them in. Just put your hand up. I'll stop. But yeah, next slide, please. So the top left, that's an example of, I think that was
Haiti.
That's Haiti, yes. As you can see, quite dusty. Computers don't like dust. So we had to keep brushing them down, making sure that they worked. One of the tents had an air conditioning unit set up. We weren't, unfortunately, in that tent. Every now and again, one of us would go, my laptop's not working. They'd go and put it in front of the air conditioner just to cool it down so that we could then take it back and work for another couple of hours before it stopped working again or worked really slow. Picture on top right, that's Chris Jarvis, who's actually at training. I'll come back to that. Sorry. You can just see the side of my head. That's me on the right, the top right. That's in Mozambique, which was again another massive disaster. The hurricane, the typhoon, and we were working out of the airport with probably about 250 people, no air conditioning, planes landing, taking off with supplies. So it's pretty noisy, pretty chaotic. But we found a nice little corner away from everyone else, and we had a little front desk to kind of shield all the people who were doing all the work from everyone asking us for products. As I said, sometimes we're lucky enough to stay in airport in hotels. I've stayed in some nice hotels on deployments, but they're not so much fun. You kind of want to be right, like experiencing what's going on, and not be separate from the people who are suffering. You understand more what's going on to the people that you're trying to respond to if you're sleeping in a tent, because that's the reality for the majority of people who've been affected by the hurricane or the earthquake or the tsunami or whatever. So bottom left, that's my bed, which I made up on a balcony of a hotel. Half of the hotel was destroyed. So I was sleeping in the same bed as one of my colleagues for the first night. It was like, don't fancy this, he snores. So I moved out to the balcony. The reason we were sharing, half the hotel was destroyed. So there was not enough rooms for everyone. So we were sharing with other people. I was lucky I was sharing with somebody I knew, but that may not be the case. And one thing I remember my dad asking me a question when I went to Haiti. He said, "What type of hotel are you staying in?" It's like, there's been an earthquake, biggest one in the region for 100 years. I'm not going in a stone structured building until somebody has looked at it and signed it off. I'm sleeping in a tent. Thank you very much. One thing we're going to be eating later, aren't we? One thing that we all work with is food. If you don't have food, you can't function properly. And sometimes access to food is quite good, quite easy. Sometimes it's not. A lot of the times it's not. Ration packs might be the order of the day. The picture on the right, that is what I managed to source in Dominica for my lunch. Not very attractive, but it was enough to get me going. But you've always got to remember, I've got access to that. Those who are affected by the hurricane may not. So you've got to be grateful for what you get. Next slide, please. Any questions? Move on to some maps now, which is why I do what I do. It's what I'm good at. It's what the team are good at. Taking a lot of data from a lot of different sources and visualizing it into a product that answers a question and enables decision makers to make a decision based on facts. Before map action, there was nothing. There were no visualizations. It was just tables, reports, numbers, etc. When map action came along, everyone went, "What is that? How have we survived without that kind of visualization to see what is going on?" As Nigel said, who is doing what, where? So the first map, that is showing search and rescue sectors in Port-au-Prince after the earthquake in Haiti. Most of the teams, in fact, all the teams that arrive post-disaster don't know where they are, don't know what they're doing. Don't know where to go. So the search and rescue organizations decide, right, we're going to split the city or the affected area into manageable chunks. And so we visualize that. And the map on the left was updated probably every 12 hours to show what areas have been checked. So as the city, as the days progress, those areas that are white turn grey, and it just means that nobody duplicates effort of searching or fixing or visiting areas that have already been done. Because historically, before 2004, there was an earthquake in Armenia. There was no way of reporting on buildings that had been visited. A system was in place after that, because what happened, people were driving up the main road, seeing a building that was damaged, spending a couple of hours searching it, finding nothing, moving on. The next search and rescue team arrived in country, drove up the same road, saw the building, searched it, found nothing, moved on. Duplication of effort. It's about being effective and being efficient. And this is one of the kind of products which help the search and rescue teams avoid duplication and use their skills in areas that need it, not areas that don't. The map on the right, that is.
That's my first one.
Oh dear,
Fine, but-
I'll stop. Take a drink.
The latest earthquake in March. Oh, yeah.
There's a story. So this is the latest earthquake in Morocco. So I was available for this. Made myself available. 2 days working on various maps, waiting for clearance, waiting for the UN to say, yeah, let's go. Moroccan government decided we don't need anyone. It was a bad earthquake, but it wasn't anything like Haiti. 2 days. On the second day, the Libya dam flood happened. So I switched from that to the Libya flood. So I spent 25 days on Morocco and Libya. But the example of the Morocco, the different colors are the intensity of the earthquake. So the darker the color in the middle by the red star, that's where the earthquake occurred. And this kind of map shows that the earthquake may have happened in a particular place and all the ripples go out. So the focus should be on where the earthquake happened and not necessarily areas that are a long way away. As the response, if this was a response that we kind of continued with, more information would come in about population, who's affected, etc. And we would bring all that data together and enhance this map to show the areas that really needed to be visited by search and rescue or the different types of responders. Next slide, please.
So can I ask,
Of course, you can.
so how do you then communicate with those people on the ground? Do they have to then have, if you haven't got much support in terms of, keeping your phones charged up, did you send it to people on the phone? Do everyone else get it on their laptops? I mean, how do you share that information? How do you keep those people on the ground up to speed with what's going on?
If we're in the field, like I said, sometimes power is an issue. Generally, of all the responses I've been on, power has always somehow been found. For the big ones, there are agencies that their sole role is to support the international community. They don't go out and deliver any aid. They don't go out and check any buildings. They don't go out and fix anything. They just set themselves up. They set tents up, tent cities for the responders. I've been a recipient of that kind of resource in Haiti and Philippines. They feed you, they provide showers, they provide bedding. Because they know that if I have to go out and find my food, that's not what I'm there for. If I have to go out and feed someone, that's not my role. Everyone has their specific role in a response. So there's your information management, your drivers, the people who manage the warehouses, etc. In answer to your question about how do people communicate, WhatsApp, Signal, which is a WhatsApp type platform, emails, telephones. People talk about Twitter being the answer to all kind of data collection. There's too much noise. We don't get involved in that. That's not us. But one of the resources that the organizations that provide the tents and the food is power and internet. They will bring generators. They will bring fuel. They will bring internet. They will bring a massive dish. In Haiti, the satellite dish was bigger than that table. And it was able to cope with hundreds of international agencies using it to send and receive data. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no.
Where was I? What was I saying? Maps. Oh yeah, thank you. Get me back to my love. So top left, that's Mozambique. It was decided in consultation with Map Action and the International Federation of Red Cross, who happened to have in Mozambique, because he flew from Geneva, an ex-Map Action person. So he loves what we do, he knows what we do. And we designed and implemented his vision of a survey of the area affected. Massive area. Each of those red squares, I'm not sure you can see the red squares, 20 kilometers square. You can't visit those on the roads because they might be damaged or closed because of flooding. So Chris Jarvis, bottom left, is in a helicopter flying a route to visit as many of those squares as possible. Looking out the window, the IFRC designed an app, press a button, damage, severe, not severe, medium, how many people, how many buildings, etc. All that information brought together, some clever wizardry, generates the map on the left, which then influences the decision making of where do we need to go to respond to the number of people who are affected. Now, on its own, that's a useful product. Map Action's strength is to take that, then take the population, then take the roads and any other transport infrastructure and work out who is affected. So parts of that part of Mozambique really uninhabited. There's no point in visiting those with a truck full of supplies. Nobody's there. So you go to the place where the aid is needed. One of our volunteers, Emerson Tan, his best phrase is aid in the wrong place is not aid at all. And that's what you've got to remember when we're in the field. We have to remember there's no point in it's like a blanket scatterbomb. Let's distribute everything to everywhere. No, let's distribute what is needed to where it's needed to who needs it. Middle slide. For me, this is the best ever product that Map Action generated, and I didn't do it. There was a mention of Ebola previously. This is Sierra Leone. This is a map that was updated on a daily basis based on information that was received from all of the different Ebola treatment units at the admin level 1, so the equivalent of counties in the UK. And it actually influenced where the next set of Ebola treatment units were going to be placed. Because those who were making decisions before this map were going to place it in various places, various locations. But after seeing this product, they realized that where they were going to place it was where Ebola was waning, not where it was coming up. So this map, top left, cumulative. How many cases have occurred in the last X number of days, weeks? Now, on its own, that shows a picture of it's been really bad in Sussex. It's okay in Northumberland. But the other 3 maps show what's been happening in the previous 7, 14, and 21 days. And you can, and if you look in detail, you can see that, for example, in the top left, on the right-hand side, there's a county, I'm going to call them counties, dark purple, high number of Ebola cases. So the decision makers go, we need to put a treatment unit there. But if you look at the figures for the last 21, 14, and 7 days, you can see on the 7 days, hardly any cases. Very grey. That's so there's hardly any cases there. So if you put a treatment unit in that location, all the nurses and doctors are going to just sit around doing nothing, because Ebola had kind of moved from there and it was moving to a different place. So it's moving to the west of the country, not the east of the country. So they made a decision to move the construction of the treatment unit to the west of the country, in that dark orange on the bottom right-hand map. So do you want me to run over there and show you? So for me, this was a product that actually saved lives and tangibly affected the decision-making process of the health environment. The next map on the right, I made that one. This is Dominica. The water system of the country was pretty battered from the hurricane, and each water system delivered to specific villages. And so this map was generated on a daily basis, and we had a meeting every day and with really boring stuff, with a database. The database was updated to say, this is fixed, this is not fixed. This needs to be fixed, it's planned to be fixed on such and such a date. And it showed which areas had water because the system was fixed, and which areas didn't. And this influenced the delivery of water to the variety of villages, because there was no point in delivering water to areas that had water. You deliver water to the areas where the system, the water network, is broken. There's no point in delivering it to people who've got water. You deliver it to people who don't. So again, aid in the wrong place is not aid at all. Next slide, please. This is another way of showing a variety of data sets. So, as it says, we're looking for gaps. We're not looking for where things are happening sometimes. We're looking for things, for areas where something isn't happening. Because if something's not happening in an area, that's a reason to look in more detail to go, why is nothing happening? Do we need to do something there? And we do more than just maps. So we do other kind of visualizations. Bottom left, some graphs showing some information about, it's in French, so I don't understand. I didn't do this one. But we do visualizations of maps. We do visualizations of graphs. We also do online mapping, and we also do dashboards, which you may or may not have seen, which is basically this kind of information where the user can select a particular geography or a particular bit of information that they want to see. So they're in control. Now, that's not useful sometimes to people in the field because of internet. That's more for those decision makers in Geneva, New York, or Tokyo to go, let's have a look what's going on. Next slide, please. This shows what activities have happened just in 1 year, in 2022. So we've completed 59 projects. It says 151 map action members. There's a lot of duplication there. People have been on 1, 2, maybe 3 responses. We've produced at least 250 maps and trained dozens and dozens of people. As Nigel said, our role or our plan is to make ourselves redundant. Because if somebody in country can do what we can do, great. Saves on airfare, saves on our time, we can advise, but the idea is that in the long run, they take control of their own environment. So as Nigel said, we've done a lot of work in Kazakhstan. We've done a lot of work in the Caribbean. There are two organizations, CESDRR in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, and SEDIMA in the Caribbean. They're replicating, very early days, they're replicating what Map Action do with their own local trained staff and volunteers.
Moved us back 3 or 4 minutes.
Is that all? Crikey. Right, next slide, please. What? Nigel said we receive funding from a variety of agencies and organisations. We don't get any money from the UN. Next slide, please. I like the first one. As Bob Geldof says, "Give me your money." So it may, like Nigel said, it may seem that we're a big organisation. We're not. We've got a very small budget, and we scrimp and save constantly. We've got an aging fleet of laptops. If we don't have a powerful laptop, we can't do the analysis quickly that we need to do. As Nigel said, we train on a regular basis. Today, yesterday, and tomorrow, which we're signing off on another tranche of new volunteers on our operational readiness course, which is happening just near East Grinstead. At the end of this weekend, we'll have another 8 volunteers that have been through the system and they're available to deploy, because there's natural wastage. People have families, they get old, they lose interest, their job just dictates that they can't. So we're constantly having a churn. Unfortunately, they haven't managed to get rid of me, but one day they will. That's it.
Questions, or does Keon have any questions?
So you just read it over onto the big screen.
It's like Eurovision, isn't it?
Yes, I would have a question.
Boris, go ahead.
Yes, well, thank you very much. Fascinating talk. I'm Boris Julik from Kiel in Germany, and I think it's really fascinating, and it's very good to be able to pinpoint the resources that you need to deliver aid. But what I didn't get is, how do you gather the data when you are talking about a country like Morocco or Mozambique or wherever? Where do you get static data from? I mean, population distribution and so on. And secondly, do you have scouts in the field that report back to you and tell you, okay, I've just been here, I've seen this, and this is where the need is, basically, as opposed to another area where, as you said, people have tried to help multiple times in the same place with no effect at all?
So we generally sit within the United Nations system, and we are, I think, as Nigel mentioned, we're kind of embedded with the UN, although they don't give us any money. So we don't, as an organisation, go out in the field that often. Sometimes we're lucky enough we do to do, and our ethos is we try and get a volunteer out for at least half a day to understand the context of the numbers and the spreadsheets and all the bits of information that they're mapping, to get the context. In answer to your question, there are, for example, Mozambique, there are about 40 or 50 different international NGOs and national NGOs that would go out and get the data, and they are managed by the United Nations person who is running the OSOC, the On-Site Operational Coordination Center. And they are saying, this is what we need, or the agency is going out and collecting information and coming back and giving that information back to us. But one of the important things that wasn't touched on is, I did touch on a little bit, about the French Haiti maps. I've never been to Haiti before I arrived. I've never been to Mozambique. I've never been to the Philippines. Not all of them speak English as their first language. So we have to be very careful about how we collect the data or how the data is given to us. So one of the things we do before we even get on a plane, we do a data scramble, which is basically getting all the data, the kind of reference map data, the admin areas, the settlements, the roads, the airports, etc. And what we do, we give each admin area, for example, a unique identifier. We call it a P code, a place code. The UN call it a place code as well. And what that does is enables reporting against an area, for example, Sussex, that may have, in a foreign language, an accent or different spelling, but it will have a unique identifier. For example, it will be in Mozambique, MOZ04. Because that's what we then use to bring everything together for MOZ04, as opposed to Sussex or Sussex or Sussex with an E with an accent, because the software we use and computers are not clever enough to realize that Sussex, and Sussex with an accent are the same, which is why we record against the P code. And the agencies that go out, we try and, as early as possible, distribute information spreadsheets that show this map, this area is called this, but please report on MOZ04 if you're talking about this area. Does that answer your question, Boris?
Yes, well, thank you very much. Now I understand better what you do. So basically, before you leave, you gather the data that is already available, and then when you get there, you get the reports back from the people from the UN who are in the field, and you are the ones who brings it all together in the map because you're the GIS experts, right?
Correct.
Great.
Yes.
I think it's also appropriate to say that there are lots of different sources of data, and we haven't talked about it very much today, but of course we have very powerful Earth observation satellites these days, and those data are quite freely available, but they're not necessarily readily understood by everybody. So we play an important role in using those kind of data to look for features on the ground and potentially areas of damage. And indeed, then they can be used as a base on which to report from the people who do go out in the field. But as Darren says, you can't process foreign place names very easily on computers, but you can process numbers. So it's crucially important that we introduce numbers into it.
Very nerdy.
Any more questions?
We're on our last question.
Pip. Oh no, that's you. I thought your hand was up.
Yes.
It's really fascinating.
Linda, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Linda Waldman and I'm from the Institute of Development Studies.
Okay.
It was really fascinating. I really loved the talk. Thank you so much, both of you. I just had a question about whether the maps ever produce stuff that surprises you or offers a contradiction. So for example, maybe you produce a map that says we need a lot of help in this area, but actually when you get there, you find you don't need a lot of help. I mean, maps are great and I love the visualization, but they don't always pick up things like political nuance or things like that. And I think they're amazing. And I think what you're doing is amazing. I just wonder if there are times when the maps surprise even you.
Yeah, it can happen, but numbers very rarely lie. If those that are giving us the numbers are providing the information honestly. I'm a cartographer by training, and cartography is seen as an art, but it's also it's a political science, and we have to constantly be aware, subtly be aware of, and question who is providing that data. Do they have a reason whereby they might be not being as honest as they could be? That's not to question everyone, but one of the things that we generally do through training is to go, we make a product and we look at it and go, does that make sense? The numbers are there, but does that make sense? For example, I've received data in the past.
Sorry, we stop at that, and perhaps you could have an informal, for example, over the dinner table.
Yeah.
I'm ever so sorry, we're going to have to stop now. Georgina, would you like to come up and stand in front of the camera, please?
Yeah, thank you very much for a most fascinating and interesting talk. And when I first heard you at the conference, at the district conference, that's what really excited me. And I thought it was a fascinating thing. And I think you do a wonderful job. Thank you.
Lottie,
Yep.
who's joining us for the other evening. Thanks, please. Looking at the camera, which is there.
Are we not going to welcome Linda Waldman, please?
Yes, we can.
And Nazone. And
It's all right to do after.
Oh.
Yeah. So Robert, could you come up and you just need to look in the camera, please? That's it. That's
Thank you. In some ways, I'm just going to echo what Georgina has said, in thanking Nigel and Darren for giving us a fascinating and informative insight into the work that they do. And I'm sure, like most people in the room and our friends in Germany, what we see generally when there is a natural disaster anywhere is when the media go in, the cameras go in, we hear all about, what the UN is doing, what the big international aid agencies are doing. And yet there you are, quietly in the background, getting on with vital and important work that actually saves resources and should, as you rightly say, aid in the wrong place is no aid. And I think one of the things I'm going to say, and it's not a political comment, but in terms of funding, I was rather saddened, as I'm sure many people in this room were, to see that currently this country is not providing some aid. And a small amount of money in great scheme of things could make such a difference. But thank you so much for coming. And I'm sure all of us, next time we see, and as you say, we will see natural disasters in the future, I think we will have a much better insight into what is going on. And we thank you.
We are going to do things a little bit back front in terms of what we would normally do. And we are going to do the Rotary toast now, whilst we still have our Dutch and German colleagues with us. So will you all please stand for the Rotary toast? Rotary, the world over. And this is the point where we say goodbye to our Dutch and German friends, and how lovely it has been to see you. If anybody would like to go in front of the camera, then you can go and wave your goodbye.